During the drafting of the Constitution here at Independence Hall in 1787, the issue of the slave trade had to be discussed. Congress was going to be given the power to regulate international commerce, which would mean that it would have the power to abolish the slave trade. A few of the Deep South states said that they would not join the Union if the slave trade could be abolished. The rest of the South and the North wanted the practice abolished, and Virginia, Maryland, and North and South Carolina had already done so. But South Carolina did not want the federal government to be able to abolish the slave trade, even though they had outlawed it in their state.
The convention resorted to a compromise so that all of the states would join the new nation. The new government would have the power to regulate the slave trade, but not until 1808. In 1807, the act prohibiting importation of slaves was passed as an attempt to stop bringing more slaves into America from Africa. This act passed with a large majority of both the North and the South supporting it. Its widespread support is probably attributable to the declining demand for slaves at the time and a slave revolt which happened earlier in Haiti. That slave revolt caused fear to go through the slaveholding states that the same could happen there. 12 years after that act, another law passed that was enforced at the time of the Civil War. That act said that any American who was a crew member on a ship, whether or not it was owned by another nation which captured people to put them into slavery anywhere, had committed the crime of piracy, a capital offense. It also made it unlawful in the ship subject to seizure if it was outfitted for the trade. This act was on the books, but rarely enforced. In the North, the slave trade was looked down upon, but not to the point where the society was willing to condemn it. In fact, a whole new trade opened up in the 1840s and 50s, called the Coolie Trade. The word coolie comes from a Hindu word that means laborers. With the decline in the African trade, the new Coolie Trade was open, bringing men from the Far East primarily to work in Peru and Cuba, but also on the west coast of the United States. This trade was legal because they came over as indentured servants, even though few survived their period of indenture. Many were used in the United States in the building of the Transcontinental Railroad. For the laborers being brought over, this trade was as terrible as the African trade and had about the same death rate during transportation. In the African slave trade or the Coolie Trade, human trafficking was essentially the same, just on different sides of the country. It showed great disregard for human life and was perpetrated largely by the northern shippers.